It was a red-letter day in America, my friends. Yesterday, President Donald Trump returned to office, a day that was filled with many speeches and spectacle. But perhaps more importantly, President Donald Trump wasted no time in firing off a flurry of executive orders, not only rescinding and deleting every single one of former President Joe Biden's executive orders, but he ordered sweeping changes that will ripple out across the fruited plains. Now, there are too many to cover in this one video, but I'm going to give you some of the highlights of yesterday's flurry of executive orders. Remember the Paris Climate Accords? Gone once again. Radical environmentalism? Getting the smackdown from the Trump administration. For example, one of the executive orders that he titled as Putting People Over Fish, Stopping Radical Environmentalism to Provide Water to Southern California. Essentially, this order resumes that which was stifled and stopped. Previously, the state of California had filed a lawsuit to halt the implementation of improvements to their water infrastructure, because why would they want to improve their water infrastructure? Everything is working just fine in California. Apparently, the doofuses running the state didn't care about fixing their water crisis. The original plan for this water infrastructure improvement had aimed to allow huge amounts of water to flow from Northern California rivers to the Central Valley and Southern California part of the state. Something, by the way, which Southern California has desperately needed for a long time, because the environmentalist wackos in that state have refused to allow them to increase their water reservoirs. However, environmentalist wackos fought tooth and nail to prevent this. They were arguing to protect fish species as the reasons why we couldn't improve the water reservoirs in California. They also claimed that the water would flow wastefully into the Pacific Ocean. But as we've seen in Southern California, a lack of water has been a serious issue for the state. Case in point, the massive wildfires that just devastated parts of Los Angeles County. Next up on the executive order list was the Restoring Freedom of Speech and Ending Federal Censorship. This order from the Trump administration is aiming to protect and strengthen free speech rights here in the U.S. For example, the order sets a clear policy to secure the right of American people to engage in constitutionally protected speech. As part of this executive order is the prohibition of government interference in speech. It ensures that no federal government officer, employee, or agent engages in or facilitates any conduct that would unconstitutionally abridge the free speech of any American citizen. It will also protect taxpayer resources. This order mandates that no taxpayer resources are used to engage in or facilitate any conduct that would unconstitutionally abridge the free speech of Americans. And it will also be used as a way to investigate past misconduct by the federal government. It is directing the Attorney General to investigate federal government activities over the last 4 years that may have been inconsistent with free speech principles and recommend appropriate remedial actions. Furthermore, the executive order will be used to limit government censorship as a whole. Part of this order aims to prevent the federal government from exerting pressure on social media companies and other platforms to moderate, deplatform, or otherwise suppress speech that the government does not approve of. This addresses the misinformation concerns, where it challenges the previous administration's approach to combating misinformation, disinformation, and so-called malinformation, which the order claims infringed on constitutionally protected speech. Now, this isn't a catch-all here, my friends. There is still the problem of mass censorship on many social media platforms outside of government interference. The social media platforms wield too much power over what American citizens can say today. Their Orwellian tactics that they deployed on American citizens over the past 4 years has been obscene. It has been terrible. We have all just lived through the Orwellian nightmare of social media being able to control what American citizens say. Whether or not the government was behind each and every act of censorship is hard to say. But contrary to what they might claim, I believe that social media is the public square, and social media tech giants should have no rights in censoring anyone outside of, say, criminal behavior. Social media platforms deserve to be a sacred bastion of free speech, at least in my humble opinion. And then there was the freeing of the J6 hostages, as Trump put it, which ended the years of lawfare that kept people in jail, many without trial for years, something that is deeply offensive and troubling to American citizens who value our right to a speedy trial.
So this is January 6th. These are the hostages. Approximately 1,500 for a pardon.
Yes.
Full pardon.
Full Full pardon or commutations?
Full pardon. We have about 6 commutations in there where we're doing further research. Nice to see you again. So this is a big one. Anything you want to explain about this? We hope they get them. We hope they come out tonight, frankly. They're expecting it. Approximately 1,500 people. Six commutations.
Were there any cases you did not commute or pardon?
We're looking at different things, but the commutations would be the ones that we'll take a look, and maybe it'll stay that way, or it'll go to, full pardon.
And the order does require the Bureau of Prisons to act immediately on receipt of the pardons and
Right.
commutation orders. Sir, this is an
Why don't we get that down so they can get them going right now?
Yes, sir.
Is that okay?
Now, this is important because the Biden administration still has held hundreds of protesters without trial who are still in jail 4 years after the fact. Their lives have been destroyed. There was no way out of the madness until now. Now, of course, Democrats expressed outrage, as did many in the legacy media, the dying media. But for most Trump supporters, it was a great sigh of relief to have these people returned home. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Donald Trump also revoked 78 executive orders issued by Joe Biden, which had previously overturned Trump's own policies. Additionally, Donald Trump has implemented a regulatory freeze to halt the issuance of new federal regulations until his administration fully assumes control of government operations. He also is imposing a federal hiring freeze, and as part of his directives, all federal employees were ordered to return to in-person work at their office buildings in Washington, D.C., starting Monday. Next up, there was the Anchor Baby executive order. This order was designed to end the Anchor Baby loophole, or birthright citizenship, for non-citizens who happen to be born in the U.S. This was part of the 14th Amendment that was originally designed to be used for former slaves who had been taken here unwillingly by Americans purchasing them. And after the Civil War, the Democrat states, the slave states, didn't want to give them full citizenship, and so the 14th Amendment was born. Now, the law has since been corrupted to include non-citizens who just happened to cross the border and then had children in the U.S. The U.S., by the way, is the only developed or first world nation that has this kind of law of the land. And so, as I believe rightfully so, Trump has made his move to try and end it. But there will be legal opposition here. The ACLU has already announced their plans to sue the Trump administration to block this change to the 14th Amendment loophole. But Trump still wasn't done winning. There was also the TikTok executive order. He's given TikTok a 90-day reprieve to negotiate a deal to divest China from their ownership of the platform. And then there was the executive order regarding the two sexes, which is one of my personal favorites of the day. This was a return to sanity by removing DEI garbage from the federal government. So you can say goodbye to anti-science, where there's millions of genders and all that stupidity, and say hello to a return to normality. You see, the executive order, which was titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government, establishes a new policy framework for the United States government regarding sex and gender definitions and policy. It will only recognize the two valid binary sexes, male and female, defined as immutable biological classifications. It will define women and girls as adult and juvenile human females, respectively, which is retarded that we even have to define this. What the hell has the left lost their damn minds on? I mean, come on, people. Anyway, it rejects the concept of gender identity as a replacement for biological sex in federal government action. And it requires all federal agencies to use sex-based definitions in policies and documents. How in the world did we get here where we had to have this mandated? It's so stupid. Anyway, it's also going to mandate the government-issued identification documents reflect biological sex, which again, how did we get here? Well, that's even needed. It directs the removal of policies promoting gender ideology from federal agencies, and it ensures males are not detained in women's prisons or housed in women's detention centers. He will also direct the Department of Housing and Urban Development to rescind certain gender identity-based policies, thank God, and it will prohibit federal funds from being used for medical procedures to alter an inmate's appearance to that of the opposite sex. Furthermore, on the legal and administrative changes here, it will rescind several executive orders from the previous administration related to gender identity. It will dissolve the White House Gender Policy Council, and it will direct the rescission of numerous guidance documents from various federal departments related to LGBTQ+ barbecue issues. So essentially, the federal government is going back to science and fact. No longer will the federal government cater to the mentally ill, nor promote an ideology that has poisoned the minds of a generation of young people. It is a huge step in the right direction towards tearing down this oppressive regime of mind Nazis that have tried forcing their ideology upon the entire world. These people have been trying to gaslight the American people into going along with one of the most absurd and stupid ideologies and lies that we have ever seen or witnessed in our lifetimes. To me, even the fact that we got to this point where we needed the federal government to have to recognize so-called biological truth is insane. But here we are. Goodbye to men wearing dresses in the federal government, pretending to be women. Goodbye to cross-dressers in the White House. The grown-ups, my friends, are back in charge. Now, it is worth pointing out, though, that the battle is not over when it comes to the world of DEI and gender ideology. This just merely deals with the federal government and anything that they spend money on. There will still be fierce resistance on this ridiculous ideology. Now, to wrap all of this up, there are many other executive orders, and there will be a myriad of others coming soon. The first full day of Donald Trump's presidency begins today, and I'm expecting a massive stack of new news coming by day's end. So buckle up, my friends. We are only just getting started.